He placed him back. They jumped back, and he placed him back in the river, and they jumped back again, and he thought, maybe I should worship Shalagram. So he worshipped those Shalagrams, and one prominent Shalagram Shila he called Damodar. But then, one day, a wealthy Vaishnav was giving gifts to all the Goswamis of flutes and necklaces and dhotis for their deities. And of course he gave the same to Gopal Bhatta. Think, how am I gonna give a flute to a Shalagram Shila? And how can you dress him with a dhoti? And these necklaces. He didn't want the items to go to waste. He didn't want the sponsor, the donor, to be disappointed, but he didn't know what to do. So he put them before the deity, the Shalagram Shila. But this was Nrsimha Chaturdasi. And he was thinking, and he actually told the Shalagram Shila that Lord Nrsimhadev appeared from a stone pillar in a beautiful half-human form. And if you would like to assume a form that can utilize this flute and this dhoti and these necklaces, then I will serve you accordingly. But nothing happened. So he put the Shalagram Shilas to bed, and he took rest. When he got up in the morning and came to wake the Shalagram Shilas, the Damodar Shila had become the most exquisitely beautiful, enchanting, threefold bending form of Shamasundar. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami just fell down, offering prayers of gratitude and joy. And word traveled quickly. Rupa Sanatana and the other Goswamis came and they looked. This deity form is most exquisitely perfect. Rupa Goswami and Gopinath of Madhu Pandit. And the acharyas of those three cardinal truths are Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. And accordingly, the different features of those different deities perfectly replicate the beauty of Krishna as he was in his personal form 5,000 years ago. And at the time that Vajranath had commissioned these deities to be carved, there were still some devotees who had seen Krishna's personal form. And they commented that the lotus feet of Madan Mohan perfectly resemble those of Krishna. And the hands and the chest of Govinda are perfect. And the smiling face of Gopinath is perfect. And Madan Mohan had all these perfect virtues all in one threefold bending form. And the Goswamis were so delighted to see this. Happy at the good fortune of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. This is Vaishnav, always happy at the good fortune of other Vaishnavas and everyone in the world. So, Gopal Bhatta Goswami worshipped that deity of named Radharaman because he appeared right at that area where Krishna ran away from the Rasa Lila to give the ultimate pleasure to Srimati Radharani, which is what Radharaman means. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was worshipping this deity, but then he was thinking, he was feeling a little guilty. I promised my father I would spend my life worshipping Lord Gauranga. But here I am, worshipping Radharaman. It's not that in Krishna consciousness we become free of emotions. Our emotions become purified and intensified as expressions of love, not expressions of our selfish, egotistic feelings as they are in conditional life. Mayavadis and impersonalists, they practice yoga and different transcendental methods, including devotional service, chanting the holy name, worshipping the deity, and serving devotees, because they want to become transcendental, equipoised, and liberated. Real devotees are not concerned with liberation. They're not concerned with peace. They're concerned with love, which is the ultimate abode of peace and joy. We preach like this, that our devotional service should be free of desire for jnana, karma, or liberation. But how much do we really want to just be free from the miseries of this world? And how much are we impersonal? More than we would like to admit. Anyway, he was feeling very emotional that I promised my father I would worship Lord Gauranga. Here I am worshipping Radharaman. And before his very eyes, that threefold bending form of darkish Shyamasundar playing on his flute became again that golden Navadvip Chandra, Lord Gauranga in his household days as the husband of the goddess of fortune, with his beautiful wavy hair cascading around his face, which is more beautiful than the autumn moon, cascading down across his broad shoulders. And he just fell down again, offering his obeisances and prayers to Lord Gauranga. And when he looked up, he was again Radharaman smiling joyfully and mischievously upon him. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami realized that all his desires and all his obligations had been perfectly fulfilled in worshipping Radharaman. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was very influential amongst the Goswamis, but we don't hear it in Chaitanya Charitamrita because of his own humble request. When he came to Vrindavan, at the request of Govinda Dev, he was serving Rupa Goswami's deity. He assisted in the writing and editing of Hari Bhakti Vilas, as well as commentary on Bilva Mangala Thakur's Krishna Karnamrita. And actually, Lord Gauranga in Sri Rangam had predicted that when you become like the younger brother of Rupa and Sanatan, disciples will come to you from all over the land and you will assist in the printing and distribution of the Goswami's books. He didn't know how this was possible. One great general under Akbar, Man Singh, became a disciple of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and he gave him the instruction, build the temple for Rupa Goswami's deity. And he inspired the building of Radha Govinda Mandir. And back in Puri, Lord Gauranga was wondering, I wonder if Gopal Bhatta has arrived in Vrindavan as yet. And one day when he came to Tota Gopinath temple and he asked Gadadhar Pandit, I wonder if Gopal Bhatta has made it to Vrindavan. And just then a messenger came from Rupa and Sanatan. Yes, he is here. We've adopted him like a younger brother. He is a real jewel who is enriching life in Vrindavan Dham. And Lord Chaitanya, so happy to hear this good news, he sent gifts to the Goswamis, and to Gopal Bhatta he sent his own cloth and the seat he would use to sit on while worshipping. And those remnants of Lord Gauranga are still worshipped in Radharaman Mandir. In Bengal, there was a devotee who happened to come upon the hair cutting ceremony just before Lord Chaitanya's sannyas. Gangadhar Bhattacharya. His first darshan of Lord Gauranga was having his hair cut just prior to taking sannyas. And when he heard the name given by Keshava Bharati to Lord Gauranga, your name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya. This Gangadhar could not articulate anything except Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya. When he turned to his village, day and night, all he could say was Shri Krishna Chaitanya. And his nickname became, actually a prominent name, then became Chaitanya Das. And after some time, continually chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, he and his wife simultaneously felt a desire from within their hearts, which they had never experienced before. They wanted a child. And she said, we should go to Puri, see if Lord Gauranga blesses this aspiration. They walked to Jagannath Puri from Bengal. And when Lord Gauranga was leaving the temple, surrounded by his divine entourage, Sarup Damodar, Ramanaranda Roy, and Haridas Thakur, and all these great associates. And here come these humble householders from Bengal. And Lord Chaitanya went directly to them and addressed them. Yes, you should have a child, because my eternal associate wants to come to you and through you. They had a child. His name was Srinivas. But in Bengal, as he was a young boy, the devotees were telling him, you had better go to Jagannath Puri, because Lord Chaitanya will not be in this world much longer. Do not miss the opportunity for his darshan. So he went to Puri. And just when he was approaching Jagannath Puri, he saw the people everywhere were crying and lamenting and falling down on the ground in great, bitter lamentation. He asked, what is going on? You haven't heard? Lord Gauranga has just departed from this world. And then after quickly vowing to commit suicide, Srinivas fell unconscious. But in a vision, Lord Gauranga came to him and told him, continue into Puri. Take shelter of Gadadhar Pandit. Learn the Bhagavatam from him. So he was enlivened. He went to Tota Gopinath Mandir, took shelter of Gadadhar Pandit, and told him that Lord Gauranga has instructed me to study Srimad Bhagavatam under your guidance. And when Gadadhar Pandit opened the Bhagavatam and showed Srinivasacharya, there was no words left in the Bhagavatam, because when Lord Gauranga and Gadadhar Pandit would read the Bhagavatam, their tears of love would just bleach out the words. And since Lord Gauranga had left and Gadadhar Pandit could do nothing but cry, whatever remaining words were completely washed out. And Srinivas looked at this Bhagavatam and, well, how can I study a book that has no words in it? He said, this was before the days when you could just go to Rupanuga's store and offer obeisances and give him a few dollars and walk out with a Bhagavatam. He had to walk from Jagannath Puri back to Navadvip, because that's where the Pandits and the scribes are. And they didn't have extra Bhagavatams on hand. They copied them by hand. It took over a year to print a Bhagavatam. One copy. So when the Bhagavatam was completed, he walked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles back to Jagannath Puri to study the Bhagavatam and the Gadadhar Pandit. But again, approaching Jagannath Puri, everyone is lamenting and crying and falling on the ground. What now? You haven't heard? Gadadhar Pandit has left this world. The separation from Lord Gauranga was too intense. And he went to rejoin him. Again, he vowed to commit suicide. He fell unconscious. Gadadhar Pandit appeared to him in a vision. Said, go to Vrindavan, take shelter of Rupa and Sanatan, study the Srimad Bhagavatam under them. He went to Vrindavan. And in Mathura, he took his bath in Vishramghat. And he was proceeding towards Vrindavan, and he saw the devotees lamenting and crying and falling down on the ground. And what now? You haven't heard? Rupa and Sanatan have departed this world. He again vowed to commit suicide, fell unconscious, but in a dream, Rupa and Sanatan with Lord Gauranga appeared to him and said, no, go to Jiva Goswami, study the Bhagavatam under him. So he proceeded. First he met Gopal Bhatta Goswami. No, first he met Jiva Goswami, who took him to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Gopal Bhatta Goswami took Srinivasacharya to Radharaman and offered his aspiring disciples' life to the lotus feet of Radharaman. And then he entrusted him to Jiva Goswami to learn the Srimad Bhagavatam from him. And in the class, as classmates with Srinivasacharya, was from Orissa, Shyamananda. And from Khetri, Narada. And these three boys became the best of friends. They would study Srimad Bhagavatam under Jiva Goswami. And then at the completion of their Srimad Bhagavatam studies, and they wanted to do real deep Braj Mandala Parikrama. And they asked Jiva Goswami, do we have your blessings? And right at that time, Raghava Goswami arrived from his cave in Govardhan, where he spent most of his time, but he came out because he wanted for a change to have someone to go on parikrama with him. So he came to Jiva Goswami. Do you know anybody who wants to go on parikrama? He said, these three boys. So they went off in great joy, and during that parikrama, as described by Narahari Chakravarti Ganesham in his Bhakti Ratnakar, these three boys are continually going from Brajmandala Parikrama with Raghava Goswami, reverting back to Chaitanya Lila and the pastimes of Lord Gauranga, from where they would go into Krishna Lila, And they were just crossing through these different dimensions and integrating the whole experience as preparation for the next instruction. To take the books of the Goswamis, of which some versions there was only the one manuscript form, some versions say that they'd already made one duplicate, but at most there was only 2 copies of the books of the Goswamis, maybe just one, including Chaitanya Charitamrita, the most prominent. Only 1 copy, possibly 2. So Jiva Goswami, assisted by Gopal Bhatta Goswami, instructed the boys, take these original palm leaf manuscripts to Bengal, because that's where the Pandits and the scribes are, start making copies for distribution. And they had a big ceremony. A wealthy Vaishya donated 4 beautiful oxen and an exquisite ox cart on which they put this treasure chest filled with the original handwritten manuscripts of the 6 Goswamis. And with armed guards. Because, you hear about these devotees or the Lord Gauranga himself, dancing thousands of miles across the length and breadth of India. Well, bear in mind, practically every country was at war. Only Orissa was safe because of the strong protection of Maharaj Prataparudra. The Muslims and the Hindus and the dacoits, wars were waging everywhere. And these devotees and Lord Gauranga himself were, crossing continually through different battlefields. So, they leave Vrindavan with the books, the original palm leaf manuscripts. And they go through all these dangerous regions. But miraculously, they have no difficulty until they reach Bengal. And when they entered into the Hindu kingdom of Birambir Maharaj, they thought, we've practically made it. Because all during the voyage, they hardly slept or ate. They were so vigilant day and night that these books are so precious for the welfare of this world. We cannot ease our vigilance for a second, day or night. We have to protect them with greatest care. But now, the trip went quite smoothly. And if ever such a thing happens in your devotional service, don't necessarily take it as a sign that this is what Krishna wants. It's more likely a warning that Maya has set you up to be smashed if you let down your vigilance for 1 second. But look, we've made it. We're in Bengal, in a Hindu kingdom. And we hear that this king, he likes to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So after such a difficult, treacherous, demanding journey, one night they took prasad, and for the first time, they do what devotees often do after they take prasad. They fell asleep. In the morning, when they woke up and they prepared for the last leg of the journey, they looked at the wagon and the treasure chest was gone. Frantically. None of the guards, nobody knew. Where did the treasure chest go? So the first, after searching everywhere and asking everyone and nobody knew anything, Narada Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda Pandit, they just wanted to commit suicide on the spot. They had been entrusted with the original writings of the 6 Goswamis, the most precious treasure in all of creation. And on their watch, it had all vanished. But Srinivasacharya was a little intuitive and deeply wise, and it was his Prabhu Dattadesh, Bengal. He said, no. Krishna could not possibly allow this to happen. These books didn't vanish. This is part of some pastime unfolding. So he told Narottam, you go back to Keshri, Shyamananda, you go back to Arista, keep preaching. They preached mainly through Kirtan, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit. Whereas Srinivasacharya preached by a combination of Kirtan and Bhagavatam. And in his Srimad Bhagavatam dissertations, he would illumine the life and teachings of the Golden Avatar, which is the very living embodiment of Srimad Bhagavatam, as are the lives of his devotees, different aspects of that absolute truth, coming in personal form to our lives to inspire us and assure us of the possibility and reality of Krishna consciousness in our own lives. So Srinivasacharya didn't know what to do. But some of the locals took compassion upon him and said, you know, you ought to talk to the king. And they told him that he likes to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and he has a pious streak to him. What they didn't tell him is he's probably the one who stole the books. Because he has this royal entourage that appears very pukka during the day. And at night they become dacoits, highway robbers. And they had the king had this astrologer who was very accurate in his predictions. Whenever he predicted there's a treasure moving through your kingdom here, and his courtiers, very cultured during the day, dacoits at night, would go, and sure enough, every time there was a treasure, and they'd steal it. And they'd pay themselves lavish salaries. So, the astrologer told the king that today there is a treasure moving through your kingdom, more precious than any gold or jewels or gems. And there's just these 3 young boys and a few guards, and they'll fall asleep one night. And the king told his men, get the treasure. So they had actually been following the caravan for some time, but they realized these devotees, they never sleep. They were getting very frustrated. But then that one night, when Srinivasacharya began to speak. And when he began to sing the verses of the Bhagavatam, which he fashioned in such a way as to reveal the mercy and the love and the Braj Bhakti personified in the Golden Avatar, King Birambir felt his heart melting. And after the class, he came up to Srinivas, who are you? Srinivas said, Lord Gauranga, out of his causeless mercy, has descended into this world to teach Braj Bhakti. He has dispatched the 6 Goswamis to Braj with the mandate to excavate the lost holy places, establish temples, install the deities, and write books for the upliftment and the welfare of the world. I, with my 2 associates in the schoolmates in this in Jiva Goswami's academy have been entrusted with the life works of all the 6 Goswamis. And here, in your very kingdom, the chest containing those original manuscripts just vanished. And if you know anything or can help us in any way, please, I beg your assistance. King Birambir just fell to the lotus feet. Srinivasacharya crying and lamenting. I am the one who stole those books. Please deliver me. Where are the books? So he took him to the secret room. Now, according to legend, when they loaded the trunk with books, Chaitanya Charitamrita was placed in first, and the other manuscripts were carefully placed on top of it. When they opened the trunk, Chaitanya Charitamrita was on the top, because it is verily the cream of all Vedic literatures which had risen to the top position. So the king asked Srinivasacharya, it was mutual, but he offered him, I will make you a room in the palace, just stay here and give Bhagavatam class every day. Which he did. And he asked something of the king. We're in Bengal. You have the pundits, you have the scribes. Copy these books. You distribute these books. And the king was delighted. He said, all the resources of my kingdom are placed at your command to copy and distribute these books, first through Bengal, then through India, and eventually to all the world. So, in that discussion between Lord Gauranga and Venkat Bhatta, regarding the superiority of the Brijavasis' worship, it's not that the Aishwarya aspect of Godhead, His awe and majesty, is absent in Braj. It is most complete, perfect, and full there. But it is so completely covered and eclipsed by the sweetness, beauty, and charm of Madhurya that what to speak of the trees, the cows, and the Brijavasis, every particle of dust is so fully imbued with the essence of Madhurya that it can transfer that potency and impart the treasure of Goloka to the heart of any humble, sincere soul. And that constitutes the supreme opulence of Braj, where every tree is Kalpavriksha, every cow is Kamadhenu, the water is nectar, the Brahmajyoti is prominent there everywhere in its personal form of Gopal, where all motion is dance, all communication is song, everything activated by the song of love emanating from Krishna's flute, to which the devotees respond in Harinam Sankirtan, where the most intimate longings of the soul find most complete fulfillment. It is the loving exchanges and service attitude of the Brijavasis that constitutes the supreme treasure of Golok, which is most pleasing to Krishna and satisfying to the devotees, and the reason why Krishna never set so much as a foot outside Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada so much liked the standard of worship at Radharaman Mandir, where for 450 years the deity has never missed an offering or lost a piece of jewelry. Because Gopal Bhatta Goswami, in spite of being such a humble, simple Vaishnava, was so calculating in how the deity worship would continue indefinitely into the future. His main family member and not family member, the disciple, Gopinath Pujari, had no inclination for Grihastha ashram, so it was Damodar who married and had children to carry on the worship. So systematically did Gopal Bhatta Goswami envision that for generations to come, the service of Radharaman would continue in very Bhakti fashion. And Srila Prabhupada would glorify their standard of worship. And one devotee heard this from Srila Prabhupada. He went there to the Radharaman Mandir and he was watching the great care and attention with which the pujaris served Radharaman. And the pujaris saw this ISKCON devotee watching with such appreciation. And this one devotee came forward and told him that if you continue through your life to appreciate the worship of Radharaman as you are doing now, you will be blessed. Take birth in our family, where you will serve Radharaman all your life. And he was elated. He ran back and told Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada told him, go find that devotee and tell him that if you continue to serve Radharaman with great faith and devotion like you are now, you will be blessed to take birth in America and serve in the propagating of the holy name. But what is this holy name? Why do we call it Maha Mantra? It's not a mantra at all, technically speaking. The mantra, a mantra, is a prayer of invocation to the holy name which is couched within. Maha Mantra is an understatement. This is Golokera Premandana Harinam Sankirtan. It is the very forms of Radha and Krishna dancing together, predicated by our invocation mantras to Guru Vaishnavas and Panchatattva. But in the holy Maha Mantra, we're chanting Hare, Krishna, and Rama. What is our inner conception? And Srila Prabhupada, he gave a very generic translation of the Maha Mantra, which can't be translated, it's holy names, but he gave it the apparent translation to establish the mood of our chanting. O Supreme Energy, devotional energy of Godhead, O Krishna, please engage me in your service. That's the general mood Srila Prabhupada gave for chanting Hare Krishna. But it is our inner conception of the names in the mantra that will determine our spiritual attainment. Hare is obviously Radhe, who delivers us to Krishna, but Rama can be another name of Krishna. It can be Dasarati Ram, it can be Parisharam. And according to our inner conception, that holy name can take us to Golok, or Ayodhya, or Vaikuntha, where the mercy of Lord Gauranga is almost impossible to achieve. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas are most astute in seeking the essence. And they give another possibility for our conception in the name of Ram, which is Radharaman, the one who gives the ultimate pleasure to Srimati Radharani. And if we chant the Mahamantra with that conception, our destination will be the heart of Golok, the forest of Vrindavan, where an endless night hosts continuous festivities of endless dance, where the song of love, broadcast by Krishna's flute, inspires chanting of the holy names and all recipients. And this is what Lord Gauranga, through the 6 Goswamis and the Acharyas in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, have delivered to this world. That treasure of Golok, that Madhurya Ras. Lord Narayan reveals himself in 2.5 rasas. Lord Gauranga is telling Venkatapata. But Krishna manifests in 12 rasas. 5 primary, 7 secondary. And therefore we say, Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, most complete, most full. And able to reciprocate our deepest longings for intimate, loving relationships with the Supreme Lord and His devotees, which grants the deepest satisfaction to the heart. Thank you very much.
Haribol.